First of all, thank you so much for joining us for our Parent Coffee series, the first of our Parent Coffee series. The College Counseling Parent Coffees were designed to be a deep dive into topics that may be of interest to our parents. Really, our full college counseling program takes place in some evening programs for families. There's a March program for grade 10 students. We had a November junior parent program. But these are topical discussions that we think may be of interest to you. I'm Darnell Haywood, and I'm one of the college counselors here, and I'm joined by Jen Fitzpatrick and John Wagshall to talk about standardized testing. Everybody's, absolutely everybody's favorite subject on a cold January morning. So first of all, we will get started with the fact that today's topic will cover a little bit about the landscape of testing. We'll give you some practical tips, and we'll give you some things to think about as you move forward. So I'm going to start with, just like everything else in the world, COVID has affected the standardized testing world. Where we were last March when the pandemic started shutting everything down is a very different place than we are today. On the March 13th SAT, about half of our students who went to test centers were told, we're not offering the exam today, and the other half sat for the exam. After that, SAT, ACT administrations were closed into the summer and continue to sometimes have test centers that are shut down. AP exams went online in May 2020. Students took those from home. And as we will go over a little bit later, colleges began to roll out what new plans would be as an adjustment to this. And many colleges and universities pivoted to a test optional plan for the application cycle of 2021. Next slide, please. So if we were starting this coffee last year, and if some of you attended last year, you might have seen this. If you're wondering what we had showed in the past, and we talked about this as being a remarkably consistent data, what you would see is that the National Association for College Admissions Counseling really had standardized tests in terms of their importance in admissions decisions as really at the top of the list of important factors, much more important than essay or teacher recommendation or extracurricular activities. Standardized testing after the transcript was really at the top of the factors considered. After grades in college prep courses and strength of curriculum, colleges routinely reported that these were most important. However, we wanted to let you know that although we think we will see this data changing over time, and particularly in this cycle, in terms of our early news that we've heard from colleges and university, we'll outline why we still think these are important tests and still important tests for students at Columbus Academy. Next slide, please. So what you should know is that many students went test optional, but most were only on a trial basis. And although some will remain test optionals, some will not. And our college partners are telling us that they intend to make these decisions later in the year for the class of 2022. We still, as an office, recommend that every student, and we're telling this to the class of 2022 and to the class of 2023, we recommend that every student prepare for and take an SAT or ACT. We think that this may be used for their college admissions portfolio, but we also think these are really important benchmarks for families to see how students perform compared to other college-going students. We think that there's real content knowledge in these tests, and that is something that families can use and students can use as they move forward into college, thinking about what they know and what they don't know, and there's helpful data related to that. So this is a slide right here that we showed in our August meetings with seniors and with senior parents. And what we want to show you from this slide is that what we do in our office is a little bit of a trend watch. So this is outdated data. When you see the state flagships, universities still requiring tests, you'll see that Florida is circled because that's the only one left that is still requiring a standardized test for admission. But the move to test optional was swift and really happened almost completely across our system. And what you should know about this, which is interesting, is that in certain parts of the country, it was extremely hard to get into a test center. I would say Ohio was not one of those states where it became very hard for kids to get into test centers. Some families had to drive really to out of the way locations, but in certain parts of the country, there was no ability for kids to take tests. But what we saw, and what you'll see on this slide, is that, and actually on the next slide, which I'll show you, is that we really recommended that students still take a test, and we pivoted to make sure that our seniors would have an opportunity to do this. So on September 23rd, we offered an in-school SAT as a way for students who had not had the ability to test to get one under their belt. We will offer this again in April, and actually typically this is offered in April, but we offered this September to supplement what we knew was a schedule that was hard for kids to get in and take. And we felt that that way kids could decide whether they wanted to submit or not submit the scores. I want to read you a quotation from Compass Prep, which we'll talk a little bit about in terms of why we were ensuring that our students had a test and what our thought was on this. In the Compass Prep report, they said the most prudent path is to err on the side of attaining strong scores, if feasible. For many students, the operative question is not which application components are optional, but rather what are other applicants of similar backgrounds likely to present as strengths. It is too early to know which colleges will remain test optional after this year. And this is certain, and there is the uncertainty of whether a college is enthusiastically test optional or likely to favor applications that include strong scores. So we made this available to our students. So some of our students applied test optionals, but all had the opportunity to take one or more tests. I've gone over a big picture information for you. I know for some of you, if you're a grade 10 parent, this may seem really high level and like way too much data and information. But we wanted to start with this particularly for our junior parents. But we're going to go into more term definition and information about testing when I pass it on to John Wagschel.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Good morning, everyone. Great to be with you. Sorry about the little glitch there with my, my volume control sticking, but it's great to be with you all. And the operative question on this slide, how important is test prep? And in a word, it's very important. As you look at this slide, you'll see that based on feedback from the students, they have voted for these factors as highly important. You'll see that test prep gets high scores. You know, it's really like any other kind of test. You wouldn't go into a driving test without having prepared for it. Same thing with standardized testing. And we have plenty of data to show us that preparation really does make a difference. It really does work. And one of the things that we'll be talking about more, but I'll mention now, is the idea of actually hiring some type of a test prep service. And again, we'll come back to this and talk about it in more detail. And obviously, we're not here to spend your money for you. That's ultimately going to be a family decision. But we do think that this is something that is important, that should be seriously considered. And we'll talk later also some more about choosing a test prep service. And being discerning about this, that there are some companies that we know of that you should be guarded about because they have not yet established what we would consider to be strong reputations in this field. So we're guarded when it comes to Varsity Tutors and Magoosh and Huntington Learning Center as possible choices. There are others that we have experience with that really do have those established reputations that we'd like to vector you toward. Ultimately, though, a particular one would be up to you all. Okay, can we go next slide, please? Another question to consider is when to prep and when to test. And again, this is going to be really an individualized process. This is not a one-size-fits-all proposition. Sometimes we see families saying, well, gosh, my friend's children or my friend is testing on such and such day, so that should I be doing the same thing? And so we meet with sophomores and parents toward the end of the sophomore year and look at on a case-by-case basis where you are academically, in particular taking a look at your math and making a specific recommendation on timing that is best for that particular student when it comes to when to test and when to prep for that test. And in some cases, it might be early junior year. And other cases, we're saying, you know, wait for the winter time. That's going to work better for you. We will host a test prep class here at Columbus Academy. It's well, in the past, it's been here at Columbus Academy. Presently, we're working online using Zoom. It's exclusively for Columbus Academy students, and we work with Brian Stewart and his company, BWS. You'll hear more about them later. But by the way, they also offer individual tutoring for those who would like to do that. But one common thread here is really almost regardless of what our recommendation might be for timing is that we're not looking for test prep until the summer before 11th grade at the earliest. And another thing I want y'all to bear in mind as it relates to you're planning for the PSAT, and we'll talk about that more here in a moment, is that PSAT scores are not going to colleges. Okay, can we go next slide, please? And let's talk a little bit about some of the terminology that you're hearing, and you're seeing it on this slide. This is just sort of a flash-up slide for you to get a look at some of the terms, but I do want to flag for you how SAT subject tests are lined out. The colleges will no longer be looking at the subject tests. That's something you can rely on. Okay, can we go next one? All right, so let's talk some more about the PSAT. And I know you all have heard about the PSAT, and it really is a pre-SAT. It's given to sophomores and juniors here at Columbus Academy, and it's a practice for the SAT. And so the PSAT is going to give you practice. It's also going to give you a sense for where you stand when it comes to planning further preparation for the SAT. How well am I doing? And so that really is the number one consideration when it comes to the PSAT. Now, that said, if you are a junior, if you're an 11th grader, the PSAT is also serving a purpose of being a basis for consideration for National Merit Scholarship. And for that purpose, I want to flag for you a topic called the selection index. In a moment, we're going to show you all a video a very short video that talks about the score report and the different numbers that you're going to see and what they mean. And the basic scores you all, I'm sure, are more or less familiar with, but the idea of a selection index might be something different. And those are sub-scores that are directly relating to candidacy for national merit. So with that, if we could go ahead and start that video.
Congratulations on taking the PSAT and MSQT. Now it's time to see your scores, which you can get on your phone or a computer. The first thing you'll see is your total score, which is a combination of your scores on the evidence-based reading and writing and math sections. These scores give you an idea of how you'll do on the SAT and how ready you are for college. Your test scores, cross-test scores, and sub-scores give you even more details about how you did in specific areas. Scores in green show your strengths. Scores in yellow and red help you understand where you need to improve. Go to Skills Insight to dig even deeper and see what your scores say about your skills and how you can develop them further. Thinking about your scores and making a plan to improve are important steps towards college. The PSAT NMSQT has provided millions of eligible students with the opportunity to enter the National Merit Scholarship Program, an annual academic competition for recognition and scholarships. Go to the NMSC Selection Index section to see if you meet the entry requirements. You can also use your PSAT NMSQT scores to start preparing for the SAT. Go to satpractice.org to create and link your College Board and Khan Academy accounts to get started. Your PSAT NMSQT test scores will get imported into Khan Academy and give you a personalized SAT study plan to help you practice the areas where you need the most work. Most students take the SAT in the spring of their junior year and again in August or the fall of their senior year. Don't forget to register. Taking challenging classes is another great way to prepare for college.
Okay, we're going to cut it off there because that's the gist of the video.
Yep.
And hang on, Mr. Wagshall.
All right, very good. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jen Fitzpatrick.
Okay, so my first job is to sort of dispel some of the urban myths around the SAT and the ACT. So the question, I think the most popular question I get from sophomore and junior parents is, which one should I take, followed quickly by, I hear colleges prefer one or the other. And the truth is, colleges really don't have a preference. They'll take any test that you send them. So most of our students will end up taking both tests. By the way, we're going to suggest that you do not register for the test with writing. It's not anything that colleges want anymore. So you're going to register your child for the regular SAT or the ACT. And we're going to look and see, there's a concordance chart we'll show you later, which one is their preference. Some SAT or ACT tutors can tell you what they think is going to be your child's best exam. But to be honest with you, most kids will take an official score to see how they're doing, an official test to see how they're doing. So on average, we want you to know that Columbus Academy students will take this test between 2 and 3 times, as you heard John say earlier, starting in the 11th grade. 2 to 3 times is average. Some kids take it once, get their perfect best score that they say, this is going to be my best score, I'm done. And but more typically, it's 2 or 3 times to get a student's best score. So for these exams, when you're a junior, these are the 2 websites that you will use to register for an exam. And again, this is something kids and students will do together, mostly because they need your credit card to pay for a registration fee. If the registration fee is a barrier for your family, please stop into our office. We do have fee waivers for this. A question we get asked a lot too is, how good is my score? Is this a good score? So we wanted to provide you, on the screen, you'll see averages for Columbus Academy students for both of these exams. But I want to also put this in context for you nationally. So you see that our average ACT is a 29. Nationally, the ACT score average is between a 20 and a 21. The most recent data has it at a 20.6. You'll see our average SAT score is a 1346 nationally. That's about a 1060. So our students are doing quite well on these exams. I don't think it's because we teach to the test, so to speak. I think it's because our kids walk in prepared for the exam. I think we have really bright students here, and they know the importance of these exams. Okay, so earlier John talked a little bit about test prep. We had to put this little graphic up there. If you were born in the 1970s, like Darnell and me, this is a calculator that you had in your backpack, if you were really lucky, right next to your Trapper Keeper. So these are the test prep methods that we're not going to say we formally endorse, but these are ones that students at Columbus Academy have used. So we'll start with the first one at the top there. The BWS, that's Brian Stewart's company that John talked about earlier. That's at a very reasonable price point. That price point is not anything another company on this list is going to offer that low. So we have 2 sessions per year, and each session has between 3 and 4 meetings of 3 and 4 hours each. So this is really a get in there, down dirty, let's get it done, and then I'm going to practice on my own. So you're going to get expert advice on timing and strategy, and that's really what SAT prep is all about. The practice that you're going to do is on your own, but when you have the instructor in front of you, they're going to be teaching you strategy for test day and timing of each test. That's the important part, so that your student goes into that exam feeling confident and ready to go, that they can put their best foot forward. So the details and registration for this particular class is always provided in the Viking Voice. And again, it's exclusively to Columbus Academy students. That's so that we can keep the class size small. Also, the owner of this company, Brian Stewart, just a little bit about him. He is a national test prep expert. He wrote the Barron's Guide to the ACT that you can buy at Barnes & Noble. He's the author of that book. He just happens to live in Dublin. So we have contracted with him to offer that class at Columbus Academy. The next session, this is really for junior parents. If you want to perk up your ears, if you're sitting in the Zoom thinking, my child has done nothing to prepare for these exams, this should be setting off alarm bells for you. The next test prep course that we have begins January 24th, and it's not too late to register. So the other companies that are national test prep companies, we've listed some there, they are all doing Zoom tutoring. You're going to find that that price point is a little bit higher, and they offer different levels of test prep tutoring. And then there's the one-on-one tutoring. We've listed some here: BWS, Princeton Review, Premier Tutors, etc. You see the ones listed. Again, this is something that you want to vet on your own. This is not something that we are recommending. We are just telling you from our surveys of seniors at the end of their process, we ask a very simple question: tell us what you did for test prep and if you liked your method. These are the ones that get the most high reviews, the ones that have consistently been high on seniors lists. Okay, and then the last thing we kind of want to talk about is Khan Academy and their relationship with the College Board for free online prep. This is exclusively for the SAT. This is not for the ACT. So the studies all show that with 20 hours of prep on Khan Academy and College Board, the average score increase is about 115 points. And we want to show you how you can get to this. So if your son or daughter has taken the PSAT, so again, if you're a 10th or 11th grade parent, this is you. You can go to this website with your child and they can log in, upper right-hand corner. If they already have a login, then they can press let's go. And what you'll see happening is this is going to connect your child's PSAT scores with Khan Academy. And it's really amazing. We have done this with many, many students over the years. So as you sit there, you will see the magic happening. It's importing not just your child's PSAT score, but every individual question and answer that they did, right? So let's use Darnell as an example. If Darnell took the PSAT and she imports her scores to Khan Academy and the College Board here on this satpractice.org, and they get her individual question and answer, and they see, wow, she is really good at geometry. She's going to see on her screen, there's a almost like a crescent, and there are 4 sections of the crescent, and she has a 3 out of 4 on geometry. She crushed it. She's a really great geometry student. But heart of algebra, maybe she got a 2. So this test prep is going to give her many more what we call heart of algebra questions. And they're going to hammer her with questions, maybe starting off with easy until she masters those, moving on to medium and hard. There are 3 levels of the questions. If Darnell misses a question, it's going to say, Darnell, good try. You missed that question. Would you like to see how to get the right answer? And it's going to show her step by step within that heart of algebra question. Sometimes they have little videos that even walk you through it, how to get the correct answer. This is really amazing. The reason we're bringing it up is this is something that we think is underutilized by students both here and across the country. If your child is a junior and they are in our college counseling class, this week in class, we were actually forcing them to do this. We are making them sign in to do it. And this is something you should talk about with your kids. If you're a freshman parent and you're hearing this, I want you to remember next October, when they take the PSAT and then you get the scores in December, we send this information in a letter. Most people take that letter and sort of shove it into their junk drawer. I want you to remember, I was at that coffee, those ladies and John Wagshall said I should go on and do this, and please do it. Okay, a couple more little things here. Recent changes, this is a recap. Darnell talked about some of these. I don't want to go over them again. We just want you to know, we know that many of you out there are scouring the news like us, and we've had people ask us like, well, what about that ACT? I heard they're going to let us take it section by section. Right now, I would say that's a hot rumor in our field. The ACT announced it right before the pandemic. It never caught on because they didn't get the endorsement of the college partners. So we are continuing to monitor that. Darnell talked a little bit about the test optional. Again, this is widely rumored, like schools are going to stay test optional forever. Some might, but we think many are going to go back to requiring the test because their application pools have increased so much. What we're really paying more attention to is the fact that we don't think these tests are going away. We think the testing agencies are going to find ways to migrate and give their exams online if they're forced to do so. Okay, one last thing I want you to sort of have access to, and again, we will send these slides and a recording of this coffee, so if you want to ever come back to it. When we say the kids take both tests and then they try to decide what to take, so from this chart, you'll see if I took the ACT and I got a 29 and I took the SAT and I got a 1420, my counselor is probably going to tell me you're doing better on the SAT because you see on the concordance chart, a 1420 is really equivalent to a 32. So it's very easy to see which test is better for you. And then most of the time the kids will say, oh gosh, I felt better in the SAT. I got a better score. I'm going to stop taking the ACT. I'm going to put all my eggs in the SAT basket. So this is sort of how you can see. Just for note, for those of you whose kids have taken just the PSAT, the highest score in the PSAT is a 1520. The highest score in the SAT is a 1600. So you won't see that convergence here. Again, this is Compass Prep. So you'll hear more about that later. So John and Darnell, anything I missed here, feel free to jump in.
Jen, just one thing I wanted to say here was if you were looking at your child's PSAT score, you can actually look at this, and your PSAT score is the score that they predict that they would have gotten on the SAT on that day. So if your child got a 1060 or 1080, you can see that that's equal to an ACT of 21. So this is just important so that you can know where your child stands in all of this.
And one additional point I wanted to mention also, coming back to the PSAT that you all might find interesting is just the fact that we've begun an initiative working with Corey Zakaitis and Craig Dow to ultimately coordinate with the academic departments, with the faculty, where they will be able to get data that we have from the College Board about how our students have done in the past with PSAT testing, including areas of strength, areas that haven't been as strong, and that they can be aware of this as it relates to considerations in their curriculum so that we can work toward maximizing our students' opportunities to be well prepared in terms of their skill sets and ultimately to have their best testing experience.
Okay, and just to recap, thank you, John, and thank you for leading that effort. John is becoming a data junkie and digging into all of this and helping shape some of this work. So we are so thankful to have him on the team helping with this. Just a couple of things at this point to mention. All of this information that we're going over, if you're sitting here, a junior parent, you're saying, I'm hearing all this, but is my child going to learn this? I don't see them that often because they're working or playing sports or involved with the play. We are going to go over this information in college counseling class for them. We are going to give them this information, but this is so you all know some of the story as well. If you are a grade 10 parent and you feel like you're only getting 10% of this, don't worry, you'll hear it again. And we just hope that the introduction of these topics will be helpful for you. Thanks, next slide. So SAT subject tests, you've probably heard about them. They are going away and not a factor anymore. This was an old slide and we just wanted to tell you, this is not something that should be on your radar screen. Let us know if you have any questions. Score choice. So this is a term that particularly junior students and parents and guardians may hear about. And what we want to let you know about this is that we understand the nuances of scores and sending scores to colleges and universities, and score choice is a term that is used in college admissions circle, indicating whether a student can choose the scores that they want to send to colleges of the tests they've taken, or in some cases, some colleges and universities require all scores to go to the admissions office. We just want to flash this up for you to let you know that we tell our students not to send scores to colleges and universities until they are applying to school. So when students sign up for these exams, they'll get a field that says, you have 4 free score reports. put in the names of colleges and universities that you want to send your scores to. We tell our students to opt out of that and to wait until they're applying so that we can help them put their best foot forward as they apply to colleges and universities. Next slide. So super scoring is another term that you all might hear, and again, particularly junior parents. And super scoring is basically some admissions offices say, we will take your highest subscores on different sections of the SAT, and in some cases the ACT, to give you your highest composite score. So you will see here for this student that taken the test that on one sitting, these are what you're looking at is a graph of different sittings of the test. The students scored highest on the evidence-based reading and writing, and another section, another test scored highest on math. So the composite in a super score situation is higher than each of the individual tests. Some colleges will also do this for the ACT. They will take individual sections to get your highest composite. Not all colleges and universities are willing to do this, and we like to make our families aware that Ohio State does not allow for super scoring. What Ohio State is a test from one sitting as the one that they will look at for college admission. Next slide, please. So what you have here, and I think that this is important to realize, and this is kind of a downer of a slide, so I want to state that in the beginning. But I think there's a tendency in rarefied communities like ours to rejoice when you see a child who is in the 99th or 98th percentile of test takers. And that certainly is an amazing accomplishment on a national and international scale. But I'd like you all to know that what a 99th or 98th percentile testing really means. And I'm going to talk about this in context of the PSAT, because presumably most parents on this call have a child who's taken the PSAT. What you'll see is that in the PSAT, the number of top 1% test takers, there are 16,000 kids that score in the 99th percentile. And just to give you the context of that, all those kids are going to be applying to college at the same time, and colleges and universities are not only looking for high test takers. So you need to know that this is a part of their story, and it tells you how they performed as a data point, how they performed on a test on a given day. And it's there's not to be too much weight assigned to the value of a high score. And at Columbus Academy, we have between 20 and 25% of each class have students in the 99 or 98th percentile of the test. And it's just important for families to recognize that as they get those scores and try and understand that. Jen and John, did I miss anything on this slide?
You're doing a great job on the most difficult slide. Good job, Haywood.
Okay. Yes. So just be aware of this. I also think it's important to let you all know that we are hearing that colleges with the lowest admit rates had many students apply without test scores this year. Between 50 to 60% of their early applicant pools were students without test scores. And oftentimes they admitted about 40% of the students that they admitted did not have a test score. So we are seeing this as, I think our early reads would tell us that if this is a high score, may be less important moving forward in terms of a predictor of admission. Others, would John and Jen, anything else with that?
I think just to clarify, high score alone, right? So some students used to say, gosh, I'm on the edge, but I got a 35. I'm going to get in this year, right? And the answer was no, because so many other kids who had it all together. Maybe they went test optional and they had a better looking transcript. So I think just to sort of paraphrase what you were saying, Darnell, is the high score alone is no longer the golden ticket.
Great. That's
And
very
we have-
helpful. Thank you.
And we have students we know who are doing a lot of prep work. They're working really hard and they earn that very high score. And, not to be confusing about this, we absolutely want to celebrate that. Those are great accomplishments. But we also want to be aware of the fact that the high score alone is not going to be a slam dunk, just because when you look at the big picture and you see the volume of students, as well as the fact that the colleges are considering a range of variables.
Okay, go team, you helped me with the hardest slide. Okay, next slide. Okay. So if all of this if you find your face getting flushed, if you have a little bit of fever talking about standardized testing, if you have your own wounds from when you took standardized tests in high school, we want to let you know about test optional colleges. So pre-COVID, there were over 1,000 schools that did not require an SAT or ACT. Now we're looking at 1,600, actually close to 1,700 this year. And we want to let you know that these are all different types of schools that are test optional. And that these schools will put much more emphasis on academic performance as they're reading the file of the students. So they will be looking at their course selection, at the grades in the courses, at any special distinguishing factors about this. And there is a complete list of colleges that are test optional at Fair Test. We think that test anxiety is a huge factor in performance of some of our students. And we love making students aware of this, because often they can perform at their best level if they know that it's not such a high stakes game, that this score is not who they are. It's not representative of their academic achievement or potential. And so we like to start with, hey, this is a little bit like running the mile in 7th grade, if you guys remember that. You get 3 or 4 times to show when you're going to have your best mile time. You have many times to take these tests, but guess what? We can also throw it out the window and not even submit them if this is not one of your strengths. And I'd like to go over in the next slide one of the things that I think is so important in this, and this is some of the things that standardized tests do not measure that are so important in the world. Sense of humor, ability to deal with setbacks, leadership, passion, integrity, character, all of these things that we think and we know are so important to becoming an adult and to being successful in the world. And so we want to make sure that you put standardized test results in context and understand some of this and talk about some of this with your child. Next slide. I'm passing it back right now to Jen. Is that right, Jen? Is this you or John? Okay, Jen.
Okay, so one last test we want to talk about are the AP exams. So the AP exams, I'm going to talk really more to freshman parents and sophomore parents now. If this is a new concept to you, just a reminder that we don't teach classes that technically say AP Computer Science or AP World History. That class will be an honors course at Columbus Academy that leads to the AP exam. In most departments, the AP exam is optional, but we want to strongly encourage you to have your child take the AP exam because this is the lowest risk exam your child can take. If they don't like the score, they just don't tell anybody the score. They don't tell their friends, and they certainly don't tell the colleges, right? So the AP exam score is not in your College Board account, even though it's a College Board exam. This exam score is housed in a totally separate place for your students. So earlier when you heard Darnell talking about score choice, AP exams are not involved in score choice. It's a totally separate database. So let's say your child has the ability to take AP World History exam in the sophomore year, maybe an honors calculus, AP calculus exam in the junior year, and then the government exam in the senior year. If they like one of those scores, they send it. Here's why we really want your kids to take these tests. The state universities in Ohio, if your child gets a 3, 4, or 5, a 3, they get a full credit at an Ohio State University. So you may pay 94, I can't remember what it is, 94, 96, $98 for the exam, and you end up getting a full class credit. Some of our kids go into a state university having a semester's worth of credits. Sometimes they can graduate early, start working on their graduate degree. So there's that aspect of it. Also, as subject tests go away, the AP exam is a chance to demonstrate your knowledge and your proficiency on a national level, right? So in an era where everybody talks about grade inflation, like, oh, everybody gets an A in that class, or nationally, we've seen grade inflation. This is a national exam where if you get a 5, you are saying, I'm the best of the best, right? I am demonstrating that I have high proficiency, almost perfection in this high level course. So we want to encourage your kids, if they have the ability to take this, to take it. Registration has moved to the fall, and for parents who have been around a while, you will remember this is something we used to do like 6 weeks before the exam. It's in the fall now because you can gain access to a tremendous amount of online resources. The teachers have access, the students have access to this. And again, these aren't required, but just we want you to know how we feel about them and how we think about them in our office so that you know how to talk about them with your kids. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Wagshall to take us home to the promised land.
All right, very good. Thanks, Jen. So we've talked somewhat about resources before, and at this point you've heard Compass Prep a couple of times, for example, as a test prep company, and also with the concordance chart that Jen was showing you earlier. And another resource that we want to point out to you all is the Compass Guide to College Admissions Testing. It's available at the link that's shown here on the screen. And one of the bonuses here is that this is free of charge. And so this is a good resource that we want to recommend to you all as it comes to gaining insights in preparation for college admission testing, in particular the SAT and the ACT both. So we submit that to you all for as a recommendation. And if we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so here we are. If you want to follow hot topics about college admissions, our Twitter is a great place to go for all the latest in college counseling news. So join us there. We're now at the point where we've actually completed the formal part of our presentation this morning. We hope you found it informative and helpful, and have been able to spot the positive parts of this as opposed to just the parts that make you think, when we were talking about scores and things like that. But so if you have questions, we want to invite you to stay, and we're going to take questions using the chat function. So please continue online with us for that. If not, you're certainly welcome to log out at this time. And thanks very much.
I got one thank you already. So that's the only thing I see in the chat so far, which is very nice.
So if you're new to Zoom, at the bottom of our photos, you should see a chat feature. And you can just type your question right in there, or you can tell us your thoughts.
Okay.
We prefer the positive thoughts, but we'll take the negative too. How do you sign up for the BWS Columbus Academy class? Great question. There was a registration provided to all junior parents. It was in the handouts in the folder that you received. We also sent an email with a registration, and I believe it was in the last Viking Voice. So if you cannot find it, if you go on Google and just do BWS Educational Consulting, there's contact information. And Brian Stewart, if you call him and tell him you're a Columbus Academy student and you'd like to join that class, again, it really is for juniors, not for sophomores.
Okay, great. So I think we should just go down the line. So Jen took the first question. I will go to the next question, which is, do students ever use 2 different learning resources, or do they stick with one? That's actually a very good question. We recommend all students use Khan Academy. We think that's low-hanging fruit. We think it's a very good entry into this. And then I would tell you, which a little bit Jen talked about and John talked about as well, in terms of finding a match for how the best way for your student to prepare for these tests, I often use the analogy of this is a little bit like training for a marathon, and that Some people, when they're training for a marathon, they may say, I can set up a schedule. I can follow it on my own. I know I need to log in 5 miles today, 12 miles today. I've got this. Other people will say, I need to run with a group. There's no way I'm going to get out there and run unless I have my cohort, my people with me. And some people say, I need a personal trainer. Unless someone is running right beside me, I am not going to get these miles in. And so what we think with families is that they need to reflect on their child, reflect on their resources, time, money, all of those things, and realize the range of options out there available to them, and try and find a best match and fit based on some of those factors. Some of what you know about your child, some of what you have learned about either classes or individual tutoring, and how much you want to invest in this. Just so you know, we see families approach us in a whole different way. We've listed a number of resources, and I think it's good to talk with the college counselor that your child is working with if they're a junior about best options moving forward.
Okay, so I see a question, do all the honors classes offer an AP exam? So let's go ahead and talk about that. It's almost a yes. Typically, the honors classes are moving toward the AP exam. There are the rare exceptions. For example, in the area of computer science, the honors computer science 1 is going to lead to the AP exam, and then the other honors courses in that field are going to be post AP. So it would make sense that you're not going to take the AP exam after those subsequent classes. In most cases, though, if you see honors, it means it's leading to the AP exam. And just being a little bit careful, maybe more than necessary with the wording, the classes don't actually offer the exam, but they lead to the exam. But when it comes to actually taking the exam, that's going to be separate, where you have to actually sign up for it. It's not something that just happens automatically because you're in the class. And at the appropriate time, your students would receive the guidance on how to separately register for that AP exam.
Okay, next couple of quick, easy questions. My daughter did the SAT. Can she still do the ACT? Yes. You can take them as many times as you want. And I'm going to jump down to one that's related. Do colleges ever ding kids for taking it more than X amount of times? The answer is no. But let us say this. 3 times is kind of when we see the max out. So if we dig into the data, we see score improvements from test 1 to 2, 2 to 3. Statistically speaking, from test 3 to 4 and 4 to 5, there's very little score increase. Statistically, we have the kid here or there who will see an increase in those exams, but this is on both the SAT and the ACT. The national data does not play that out. Also, you will hear us say in other presentations, we don't think the ACT or the SAT is something that you should be able to list as an extracurricular activity. Like, oh, I took it 7 times, 7 Saturdays. Please, dear God, no. Like, that's not a wise testing strategy. The other thing I would tell the younger parents here is, don't start talking about this with your 9th grader. Your kids know about this. They go to a college prep school. They have older friends on teams and in the performances that they do. We will talk about it with them when the timing is appropriate. But for now, just let them do their business of learning, right? So what they're learning in the classroom, then we'll do the test prep later and get them ready for the tests. Okay, Darnell, I'll let you take the next.
Okay, yeah. So quick question. Some colleges require all results. Does that mean both ACT and SAT scores must be sent? And the answer to that is yes. And we will work with students on that when they get to that point. I think I see a couple of questions about the Brian Stewart, Khan Academy, Prep Scholar. Again, this is not something that we are in the business of evaluating. These people do not work for Columbus Academy. We do not go in and assess their programs. This is really about family student match and fit. Khan Academy is no charge, so we recommend that to everybody. Then after that, we are saying you and your family should do some research about what is the best match for you in terms of test prep. Let me see if there's
Can I
one.
add one quick thing there so Khan Academy and BWS are 2 totally different things. Khan Academy will just let you practice questions. BWS has a human teaching the class and giving you timing and strategy. So those are really 2 different things. I just want to make sure people understand that.
Yeah, and I think the last one I'll answer is there a trend for CA students doing better on either the SAT or the ACT, or do the scores come out generally the same? The way that it works out on the national scale is kind of the way it works out at Columbus Academy. 1/3 of students perform better on the SAT, 1/3 of students perform better on the ACT, and 1/3 perform about the same on both. As a parent of a senior, I have to tell you, some of what played into this for us was timing based on my child's other commitments. When they were giving their junior speech, when they were in a sports season, when it was a time that worked for our family. The tests are more the same than they are different now. Those of you may have known previously that there was a penalty for guessing on the SAT. All that's gone away. Basically, these tests are very similar now. And so although we see differences, I think they're related more on timing and when a student was ready to take an exam, and basically a little bit of luck on that exam day.
So there's a question about understanding that taking an honors class best prepares students for an AP, but can students take it if you've had an advanced class, not an honors class? And the answer here is that any person really can take an AP exam. It's just a question of how well you've prepared for it. And as you said, the honors class is geared for that purpose. So if you were looking at taking an AP class and you're an AP exam and you're not in a class that's purposefully geared toward it, it would be really important to be mindful of the fact that there is some prep work that ought to be done in order to get yourself ready for that test. And that would be something to speak with the teacher about. And they could, for example, make some suggestions about additional review work that could be done. I know from my own experience as a prior history teacher, sometimes people who are not in an AP level class would want to take the test, and we would vector them to some additional work or resources that they could look at in order to put themselves in a position to succeed.
Quite a couple of questions from freshman families. What do you suggest for preparation for the PSAT? So the first time your child will take the PSAT is sophomore year. We will give them in their advisories the PSAT practice booklet, and that has practice questions. The grade 10 PSAT is just really for your kid to get a chance to see, what does it feel like to take a test for that long? What does it feel like to take an official college board exam? That test score doesn't count for anything. The reason we have them take it sophomore year is for them to get an indication of where their strengths and weaknesses are for the junior year exam that counts a little bit more. Which honors classes lead to an AP? Your teacher would have told you that. But no class in the freshman year aside from honors computer science 1 leads to an AP exam. Resources for students who don't traditionally standardized test well, students with ADHD. Well, we will contact you in the grade 10 meeting and advise you on how to apply for extended time if you get extended time at Columbus Academy. So that's all stuff that will be addressed individually in your grade 10 meeting in the spring of the junior year. I hope that helps a little bit. And then information, this is a related question, helpful for sophomore students who are starting to feel pressure about testing. We hope this helps to sort of put it in perspective. There is no advantage. And in fact, I want to tell you why you wouldn't want to test as a sophomore. Many colleges, I'll give you an example. Some of you know I'm from Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon, which is right in the backyard. They actually don't accept standardized testing from the 9th and 10th grade. If you take a 10th grade exam and you get a great score, it doesn't count at some colleges. They want it to be in the 11th and 12th grade. And they're doing that to sort of tamp down the pressure on standardized testing. They don't want kids worrying about this too early.
And I heard in that question a little bit like, shouldn't the students know about this? The bottom line is actually they shouldn't. It usually just ratchets up stress to understand this. We have noticed over time that really parents are on a different timeline than students are. So we find that the students are ready to hear about this at the end of the sophomore year, at the beginning of the junior year, and throughout the junior year about testing. If we went to sophomores right now, they're only 3 semesters into high school and said, hey, we need to tell you about this test that you need to take when you apply to colleges as a senior, it only adds pressure and stress to them at a time where they aren't able to do that. These are kids who are thinking about getting their license. Will school be in person? Am I going to be able to be in the spring musical? You know, they're not thinking about this, but as parents, we know it's helpful for you to have this. We do this at an age appropriate level that we bring this to students. So we think as a family, you can look at it and you can know where your child is, but At this point, that's a little bit of information that you have before moving forward with the plan. In terms of, I see some questions about timing of the exam for juniors. Basically, this is the current junior class will have the opportunity to test through the fall of their senior year. And what we want to help families realize is that there's no best time for kids to test. It's when they're applying to college, they want to feel that they have given these tests their very best shot and that they feel good about their ability to apply either with a test score that they've worked hard to attain and that they've tested a couple of times and they feel really good about it, or they can say, look, I took these tests 3 times. They're not for me. I'm applying test optional. I want this to work on I want them to look solely at my record because this is a test optional school. What I think what you want to be aware of as a parent of a junior is clearing the space and calendar for them to take these tests. So you want to be looking at your calendar and saying, okay, there's the test in March. They tested April at school. We think the June test would be good for our child. And we think the September test would be good for our child. Not to say, oh, we planned a spring break trip and we can't take it then, or you don't want to get yourself caught in a corner, not having these opportunities to take the test. And I think once a kid gets a score that they feel like reflects their ability and knowledge, there's a bit of comfort that comes in that. And there's a bit of a sense of being able to look at colleges that match what they're looking for. In terms of the actual test, anytime, winter, spring, summer. And we also want to recognize that right now with, cases spiking of deaths in the US and the high COVID numbers, this may not be the right time for your child to test. Although you would say, I would love to get in and take the test right now, we believe our safest administration will be at school in April, and that there will be other times that kids can test as well. So thank you, Jen and John. Oh, and I will say 1/3 of students get their highest test scores in the fall of their senior year. We've seen that happen. So please know that there's some students who sort of get their score and they're done, and then others who say, I got to give it one more shot, or I'm really exhausted. And then Mr. Wagshall will say, hey, take it one more time, just give it all you got. And then the students will get their highest score. Jen and John, anything else?
I think the last thing I'd add is we're really lucky. Our faculty are super supportive here. When we said to faculty in August, gosh, we really want to offer another in-school administration of the SAT, which meant taking a day of instruction away, they didn't even bat an eyelash. Well, maybe one eyelash, they were bummed about the instructional day, but they realized the importance of being able to offer that. I give Columbus Academy a great deal of credit. It is no easy feat to pull that off, to just add another day when we already have one scheduled in the spring, but people here want to do what's best for kids. They want to pivot when necessary. So, always thank Ms. Izakaitis for allowing that flexibility.
Yeah. And I would just add, coming back to this question about, is it okay to postpone the second try for August before the senior year? The first thing is that depending on the year, there's not always an August offering. Sometimes we're actually talking September, not August. As far as the idea of postponing for roughly that time frame, as Darnell was kind of alluding to a moment ago, it really is a case-by-case, student-by-student situation when it comes to what is recommended. You have a lot of different variables in play for each student. And in some cases, you're going to say, ideally, let's have the testing wrapped up by then so you can just start focusing on applications. In other cases, the idea of taking the test and prepping a little bit later in order to take the test at that time frame is going to be a really good answer. So y'all want to just be ready for conversation pertaining to your child as opposed to comparing notes and taking your cue from what another family is doing.
Okay, so I think, it's almost 9 o'clock. I'm going to say you've survived the colonoscopy of college counseling. Standardized testing is, we were only going to have this coffee once a year. You'll check in at that point. And we think it's good to spend some time on this, but not too much. And we appreciate you all so much for listening to us, hearing us out, and and we really look forward to working with your children.
Do you want to say a word about the two upcoming coffees?
Yeah, please, please, please.
So
You go
next
ahead,
week-
Jen.
Next week, the topic is about, formerly it was visiting college campuses, which, you really can't do that right now. So we've renamed it Seeing Campuses. I would say if you are a freshman parent, that's one I wouldn't attend. It's not as applicable to you, and things are going to change so dramatically. This is really geared at junior parents and sophomore parents. If you want to hear it twice, I think that's another thing, but it's really going to change. So we're targeting junior parents with that. And then the following Wednesday is about athletic recruiting. And I've had people ask me, like, should I come? Should I not come? If your child plays a sport at Columbus Academy and you're curious about this, please come. And I think we've invited both 8th grade parents and all the way up through high school. So Jason Singleton will join us for that, and we'll walk you through some of the finer points of that process. Okay, 9:01.
Okay, great. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Take care.